Welcome back to Explain America. This is your host, Kyle Becker. Well, has there been a more pleasant surprise in the Trump administration than Secretary of State Marco Rubio? He has been a stronger MAGA voice than pretty much any Trump supporter could imagine. And he is making waves left and right. And one exchange that he had with a congresswoman really shows that he has a spine and he has what it takes to be a leader on the America First side of things. But before we get into this story, please like, share, and comment at Explain America. We appreciate your support for common sense journalism. The Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been notching victories for the American people on the foreign policy front. He is causing waves with his diplomatic standoff with Venezuela and the Department of War blowing up narco trafficking boats. That's right, the gig is up. No more fentanyl smuggling into the United States without law enforcement pushing back. The tens of thousands of Americans who died from this drug scourge, well, they are testimony to how dangerous this drug operation is. It is effectively an undeclared act of war to smuggle fentanyl and other hard drugs into the United States. And, essentially America's worst enemies, they have been backing this fentanyl smuggling into the United States. China, for example, has been aiding drug cartels with the manufacturing of fentanyl and some of the equipment and chemical components thereof. So it is no secret that America is in a asymmetrical war with proxy actors, something that Venezuela is expert at. They have been carrying out unsanctioned state-backed violence with guerrilla groups and paramilitary warfare, and they ran into the wrong president because Donald Trump is not tolerating that. He's well aware of the nature of the asymmetrical warfare going on and the clandestine activities of foreign actors. And so Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been extremely adept and shrewd when it comes to dealing with these bad actors on the international stage. And in addition to that, he has caused an impact at home by cutting off USAID slush funds that radical activists have been using for a long time, along with globalist uniparty types, I might add, to subvert American foreign policy. And so we see with Secretary of State Marco Rubio a refreshing return to what America should be, and that is a shining city on a hill, a beacon of liberty for those abroad who are experiencing oppression. And one of those peoples that are currently under a lot of stress and trauma are Nigerian Christians, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio is being urged to take immediate action to address the slaughter of Christians in Nigeria. Recently, Texas Congressman Chip Roy credited Rubio for standing up for Christians around the world and for standing for religious liberty. He said about Marco Rubio that he has been a tremendous leader defending religious liberty and standing up for persecuted Christians worldwide, including exposing the persecution of believers in Nigeria and China that is occurring at the hands of oppressive regimes. Now, another thing that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has done that is triggering the left is that he is aiding Donald Trump's agenda of removing illegal aliens of all kinds from the United States, including those who overstayed their visas. Secretary of State Marco Rubio got in a confrontation with Democrat Representative Pramila Jayapal of Washington, and that was some time ago, but it really set the tone for his tenure as Secretary of State. And he said, Rubio, that he was proudly revoking student visas from non-citizens who stir up problems in the United States. And Jaya Paul was indignant about this, but Marco Rubio shot back with an answer that, well, she looked like she was on the verge of tears. And Rubio, well, bravo to you for showing some backbone and some fortitude in the face of radical activists who are trying to subvert the America First movement. And weigh in with your own thoughts. What do you think about this exchange? And what do you think about Marco Rubio as Secretary of State? I'm pleasantly surprised, but let's hear what you have to say. And we value your opinion at Explain America.
Where in the Constitution does it say that the Secretary of State can override the First Amendment protections of free speech? Is there a footnote that I missed somewhere?
There's no constitutional right to a student visa.
So, but is there a constitutional right? Does it say somewhere that Marco Rubio gets to determine which speech is appropriate and revoke student visas based on what you think constitutes free speech?
There's a statute that says the Secretary of State gets to determine whether someone is a threat. We deny visas every day all over the world.
Do you think that the Immigration and Nationality Act trumps the Constitution of the United States, Mr. Secretary?
Well, Congress can always change the law if you want, but I'm telling you,
Mr.
in the meanwhile, I have the authority, I will continue to revoke the visas of these people that come here to tear this country apart.
You said that, Mr. Secretary. Let me reclaim my time, because you are talking about revoking student visas based on what somebody says. And that means that you are trumping the legal Supreme Court, the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution of the United States.
No one has a right to a student visa.
Mr. Rubio, why did the administration need to use masked, armed, unidentified agents to whisk somebody off the street and deny her counsel for almost 24 hours after her arrest?
Well, you'll have to ask the agencies that did that work. I'm not responsible for that. I'm responsible for revoking the visas of these people that come to tear this country apart.
Secretary Rubio, I'm talking about this particular case where you revoked the student visa of a Turkish citizen who was a graduate student who wrote an op-ed that you didn't like. And suddenly you allowed for masked men to whisk her off the street. And you have multiple jobs, apparently. You're the national security advisor as well. So don't tell me it's not your job who snatches her off the street.
We don't do the snatching, but I can tell you we do the visa revocations.
Let me ask you about the national security consequences of people, masked men on the streets, snatching people off the streets. If these are legitimate law enforcement agents carrying out proper arrests, why are they hiding their identities?
Because then radical crazies will try to hurt them.
So you think that U.S. agents who have almost always gone without face coverings, even when they're arresting some of the country's most dangerous criminals, suddenly have so much to fear from a graduate student who wrote an op-ed that they need to be masked? Is that
that law student was a guest in the United States on a student visa. No one's entitled to a student visa.
So you revoked her student visa based on an op-ed which trumps the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution.
Someone's coming up here to stir up problems on our campus. We're going to revoke their visa.
She didn't do any of that. She wrote an op-ed. She wrote an op-ed, and I'm talking to you about her particular case.
Claims and your claims. Those are not the facts.
Reclaiming my time, you revoked her student visa because she wrote an op-ed.
Would you revoke? We're going to do more.
I have another question for you. Would you revoke the visa of someone in the United States who published claims that, quote, Jews are an untrustworthy and dangerous group? Yes or no?
We will revoke the visa of anyone who's in this country as a guest who's here to stir up trouble.
Are you going to revoke the visa of somebody who made
the case? I'll look at it. I'm looking to get crazy people out of our country.
It's not just about revoking. You actually, Secretary Rubio, excuse me, reclaiming my time. Can you explain to me why the Trump administration granted refugee status to Charles Kleinhaus, the white Afrikaner who tweeted that exact statement that I just said? There's the case.
That's not a visa.
You who granted that person to enter the United States.
That's someone that applied here through a totally different process.
Secretary Rubio,
visas are a privilege.
Secretary Rubio,
deny them all the time, and we'll revoke
revoked a visa based on an op-ed, and then you allowed for masked men to snatch somebody off the street.